I moved into a mixed-use building last month. There were a lot of reasons for it. I got laid off from my job as a data analyst, and I thought moving into a modest apartment would help me save money. The place had a dimly lit hallway with peeling paint. It felt eerie, but I tried to ignore it. I figured I was just being paranoid. The first few days, I spent unpacking boxes. My new apartment was quiet. I was tired and wanted to rest. Then, I saw something on my left hand. Glowing numbers. At first I thought it was the light playing tricks on me, or maybe an irritation from stress. I shook it off and went to bed, telling myself it was nothing. But the numbers kept changing. Each time I looked at my hand, they dropped lower. I didn't know what to make of it. I tried to focus on job applications, but that's when the thumping started. At first, I thought it was the pipes, but they were too rhythmic, almost like footsteps. I felt uneasy, especially when I noticed shadows moving in my peripheral vision. I turned, but there was nothing. One evening, I decided to step outside for some fresh air. The hallway felt heavy, and the lights flickered. I passed by Mrs. Johnson, my elderly neighbor. She was staring at my hand. It sent a chill down my spine. "You're one of them," she whispered. I smiled awkwardly and walked away. What did she mean? I started to wonder if the neighbors knew about the countdown. They acted strange, often whispering and glancing at me. The next morning, the numbers had turned a deeper shade of red. My heart raced. I thought about calling someone for help, but I felt too embarrassed to explain. Instead, I tried to ignore it. It was easier that way, or so I thought. But it felt like the walls were closing in around me. That night, the thumping grew louder. It came from beneath me. I had to check it out. I opened the basement door and stepped down. The air turned cold and damp. I felt my stomach twist as the numbers pulsed on my hand. There was a low hum, and shadows began moving closer. Then I saw him, just standing there staring at me. I asked if he was okay. No answer. My feet felt glued to the floor. My hand throbbed, and the numbers became clearer. Fear wrapped around me like a vice. He finally asked, "What's your number?" My heart sank. I turned to leave, but shadows shifted. Faces emerged, watching me. Now, I don't know how much time I have left. The numbers are still counting down. Each pulse feels like a weight pressing down on me. I might not escape this. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. I need to find a way out, but every time I try, I feel trapped. The building is alive, and it knows my number. I backed away slowly, trying not to provoke the shadows. They loomed closer, their whispers rising like static in my ears. The cold draft from the basement hunched my shoulders, pushing me toward the stairs. I turned and bolted back up, my heart racing. It was hard to breathe, but I made it to my apartment, shutting the door behind me and locking it tight. The hum still echoed in my mind. I tried to shake it off. I needed to focus. I grabbed my laptop, determined to research everything I could about numbers appearing on skin. I spent hours scouring forums and obscure websites. Nothing seemed to fit. I felt more lost than before. That's when I heard it again. The thumping. It was different this time, almost like it was upstairs. I hesitated. Curiosity battled with fear. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I felt dragged toward it, as if some unseen force was pulling me closer. Maybe someone else knew what was happening. Maybe they could help. I crept to the door and listened. The noise was definitely upstairs now. A soft, occasional knock, almost rhythmic. I opened my door and stepped into the hallway. The lights flickered above, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. At the top of the stairs, I spotted Mrs. Johnson's door slightly ajar. I walked over, my heart pounding. I peeked inside. The room was dark, but I could see her sitting on the edge of the bed, murmuring to herself. It felt wrong to intrude, but I knocked lightly. "Mrs. Johnson?" She looked up, her eyes wide and hollow. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice trembled. they'll know." "Who will know?" I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "The ones with numbers," she whispered. "They can sense it." Before I could ask her more, the thumping stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. My hand throbbed, and I looked down. The numbers had changed again, now flashing a deep crimson. I felt like I was going to be sick. Just then, the lights went out. A loud crash echoed from above, followed by a strangled scream. My blood ran cold. I rushed back to my apartment, heart racing. The hallway felt alive with some unseen energy. Shadows shifted along the walls, creeping closer. I stumbled into my room and shut the door. What was happening? I couldn't shake the images of the faces from the shadows, haunting me. Were they real? Or just a trick of my mind? I realized I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to leave. But where would I go? The only answer was to find the source of the countdown. I might not have much time left, and the numbers were still ticking down. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. That's when I saw a faint light beneath my door. Someone was outside. I pressed my back against the wall, terrified but compelled to find out who it was. I could hear soft murmurs, the same whispers from before. I had to know. I took a step back, holding my breath. The murmurs grew louder, mixing with the thumping noise I'd heard earlier. I edged closer to the door, peering through the peephole. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Shadows moved around the dim hallway, flickering like flame in the wind. I couldn't make out any faces, just vague forms swaying back and forth, whispering to one another. Suddenly, the light beneath my door flickered, and I felt a prickling sensation on my skin, as if I was being watched. "What do you want?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. The whispers paused, and the silence hung heavy like a thick fog. Then, in a hushed voice, someone outside said, "She can help us." I recoiled. Who were they talking about? I wanted to flee, to lock myself further away from whatever was unfolding outside. But then a sense of urgency washed over me. What if I was that she? What if I could help them? I steadied myself and focused on the door. "Help you with what?" I managed to call out, trying to betray none of my fear. The door creaked slightly as someone leaned against it. "The numbers. You're not the only one. We need you to come with us." I stifled a gasp. "Why?" My heart raced again, not just with fear, but with curiosity. "Because you can see them." The voice was muffled, but I could hear the insistence in it. "Time is running out. We have to move before they find you." Before I could respond, heavy footsteps approached. I turned and looked out the window. My neighbors' lights were all flickering too, just like in the hallway. Panic rose within me. What if this was a trap? Suddenly, the air turned electric, and I felt a deep rumble beneath my feet. Then everything went dark. The whispers crescendoed into a chaotic hum, the shadows towering around me like a monstrous wave. My hand throbbed again, the numbers flashing wildly, now vibrating with a sinister glow. I had to act fast. I pressed my ear against the door, ignoring the icy fear gripping my spine. "I'm coming out," I said, surprising myself with a surge of determination. "But you have to tell me everything." There was a pause. Then the voice answered, "You'll regret it if you don't." The footsteps grew closer. I inhaled deeply, trying to summon whatever courage I had left, and undid the locks, gripping the doorknob tightly. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what awaited me, but I could feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. I swung the door open. The staircase loomed ahead, bathed in eerie shadows. "What do you want from me?" I asked aloud. That's when I saw them. Faces emerging from the darkness, each marked with numbers, their eyes reflecting desperation, and something darker. I could feel it now. They were drawn to me, but not in a good way. Behind them, a form emerged, tall and menacing, whispering words I couldn't understand. My heart dropped as recognition slammed into me. I knew that figure. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was a reckoning, and it was time to find out why. The faces in the shadows shifted slightly, and I took an involuntary step back. I squinted, desperate to see them clearly. They had numbers etched on their foreheads, some faded, others newly inscribed. Each face was a mask of desperation, and the air thickened with an unspoken fear. "What are those numbers?" I asked, my voice cracking as I pointed at them. They shifted uneasily, like cattle backing away from a predator. One of the figures stepped forward, his voice strained. "They're the countdowns. We all have them. They mean what?" I interrupted, heart racing. I was tired of cryptic answers. I needed something solid, something I could grasp. "The end," he breathed, eyes wide, pleading. "They tell us how long we have left." I shook my head, not ready to accept it. "Why me? Why can I see them? I never asked for this." He looked down, and I followed his gaze. My hand pulsed faintly, the numbers shining brighter as if in response to my fear. 17, 16, 15. My throat tightened. "Because you're special," he said softly. "You're not supposed to be able to see us, or the numbers, but you do. That makes you a target." Target? The word felt like ice in my veins. My instincts screamed at me to shut the door, lock it tight, and forget everything I saw. But I couldn't. The urgency in his eyes held me captive. Suddenly, the menacing figure lurking at the back loomed closer, his outline swallowing the soft light. My skin prickled as darkness wrapped around him. He whispered again, and this time I felt the words, like a heavy weight settling on my chest. "They are here." Confusion and panic surged within me. "Who? Who's here?" "They come for those who can see," he hissed, his lips barely moving. The others kept glancing nervously around us, as if expecting the very walls to close in. Then, without warning, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into near darkness. The shadows thickened, and the whispers rose again, furious, chaotic. From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow flitting across the living room. "Get out!" the tall figure shouted, urgency lacing his plea. I didn't think. I bolted down the stairs, adrenaline surging. I had to escape this madness. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from behind me, and I turned to see the men with numbers racing after me, their eyes alight with fear. But I couldn't look back. My instincts pushed forward. My feet barely touched the steps as I flung open the front door. The cool night air hit me like a slap, and I could hear the whispers continuing behind me, louder now, taunting, hunting. But then I hesitated. The street outside was eerily still, though the chaos felt like it was right on my heels. My breathing was ragged. Where was I running to? What awaited me out there? And then it hit me. What was I escaping? Those who were chasing me, or something worse coming for me later? I turned back for just a moment, searching for answers in their faces. That's when I realized they were gone. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or terrified. Before I could process anything, a loud crash echoed from inside my house, a deafening sound that sent chills through me. Something inside wanted out, and it wasn't just the darkness following me. I turned to run, but it was too late. Something was already there. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The air felt heavy, thick with unease. Shadows shifted, coiling around the edges of my vision. I had to get away, but my legs wouldn't move. There was something in my house, and it was waiting. I darted to the side of the porch, peering back through the door. The dim light barely pierced the living room's darkness, but that wasn't what froze me in place. It was a shift. Something had taken form. A figure clung to the space between the walls, its presence a chilling distortion. I felt feverish, my hand trembling as I stared at the numbers glowing on my skin. 14, 13. They were reminders that time was slipping away. My instinct kicked in. I had to find help. I turned to dash down the street when a low growl rumbled behind me. My body jolted, and I whipped around again. The figure was now closer, somehow breaking the boundaries of shadow to loom before me. Its eyes were deep voids, sucking in the dim light, and what I had thought was a face twisted into a grotesque grin. I could almost see it mocking me. "Run!" The word echoed in my mind, a shout of panic. I stumbled backward, desperate to evade whatever nightmare was unfolding. I sprinted down the street, my breaths coming in sharp gasps. I cast one last glance behind me. The figure hadn't moved, but the weight of its gaze felt like chains. I didn't make it far before I turned the corner of my block and collided with a figure. I fell back onto the pavement, hitting the ground hard. The figure helped me up, a tall woman with fierce determination gleaming in her eyes. "You have to come with me," she urged, shaking her head as if my hesitation would doom us both. "Who are you?" I stammered, scanning the street for any glimpse of what I had just fled. "What's going on? There's something in my house." I know about the numbers," she said urgently, clutching my arm. "You need to trust me. They'll come for you. We have to move." Confusion twisted in my gut. "What do you mean, you know?" I felt sick. I noticed for the first time that she also had numbers on her hands. 10, 9. "Do you want to live?" she shot back, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Then we need to get to safety." Before I could question her further, distant sirens wailed, echoing loudly against the night sky. It felt like a warning. Every instinct told me to run. But who was I running with? "Go!" she yelled, pulling me forward. "You don't have time to think." We charged down the block, uncertainty gnawing at me. I had no idea what danger lurked ahead or what was behind us. The numbers on my hand continued their countdown. 8, 7. "Wait!" I said, but she dragged me along. I had to know, what did any of this even mean? That's when I heard it. A feral roar tore through the darkness. I gasped, fear clawing at my throat. Something terrible was coming for us. "Faster!" she shouted again, and I pushed every ounce of fear aside as we ran. But where were we going? And would it be enough to escape whatever hunted us? The pounding of my heart drowned out everything else as we ran. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting intermittent light on the pavement that felt like a path to nowhere. Each time we passed a shadow, my breath caught in my throat. I kept expecting to see that figure, the one that had haunted my house, lurking in the darkness around us. "Where are we going?" I managed to ask, my voice breathless. The urge to look back gnawed at me, but I knew I couldn't afford to slow down. "Just trust me," she shouted, barely glancing back. "We're almost there." "Almost where?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. Her grip was firm, but I didn't understand what this frantic race was leading to. I needed answers, but all I got was silence mixed with the sound of my feet hitting the pavement. Ahead, I saw a dim shape that was not another shadow. It was a building, an old warehouse, its windows dark and unwelcoming. The woman turned sharply, pulling me toward the entrance. "Get inside." I hesitated at the threshold, a wave of dread washing over me. The air felt wrong, heavy with memories I couldn't name. But I had no choice. I let her pull me inside. The inside was an expanse of shadows, the smell of rust and decay filling my nostrils. She led me to a corner, and I crouched down, my skin crawling. The countdown continued. 6, 5. I felt alive with both fear and confusion. "What's happening?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "What are these numbers? What is that thing?" "It's a long story," she said, glancing around like she expected the ground to swallow us whole. "But right now, we need to wait. Those numbers, they mean something. They mark your time." "Time for what?" I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. "Time until you're taken. Until it comes for you," she replied, her eyes darting to the door. A flicker of fear crossed her face. "It knows where we are." I forced myself to breathe, trying to make sense of it all. I thought back to that figure, the way it lurked in my house, how it seemed so alive despite being just a shadow. A pang of realization cut through me. "You've seen it too," I whispered, looking her in the eye. She nodded, her expression grave. It preys on people with the countdown. We're running out of options. The more the numbers drop, the stronger it gets. Then everything fell into place. I was the prey in this twisted game, and the woman, whoever she was, hadn't been spared either. I wanted to scream, to let my fear erupt, but instead I felt that familiar push of adrenaline. Before I could voice my next question, a loud crash echoed from the entrance. My heart stopped. I turned, dread pooling in my gut as I saw a shape darkening the doorway. It was there. I can't go back, I thought, panic flooding my veins. The countdown's relentless march rang in my ears. 4, 3. The woman grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. "We can't stay here!" But before we could move, the figure surged forward, slicing through the darkness, and I knew then that we weren't just running from some nameless terror. It was willing to finish what it started. The figure entered the warehouse like a shadow given form. I blinked, trying to make sense of it, but the darkness seemed to bend and twist around it, creating a distortion that swallowed every ounce of light. My stomach dropped. "Run!" the woman yelled, her voice breaking through the thick fog of fear. Without another thought, I sprang to my feet, the instinct to escape consuming me. We darted deeper into the warehouse, the sound of our feet echoing against the metal walls. She pulled me behind a stack of crates, and I pressed against the cold surface, trying to catch my breath. The countdown echoed louder in my ears. 3, 2. "Do you have a plan?" I panted, panic coursing through me. She looked at me, her face pale but determined. "Just keep moving. There's an exit on the other side. We can make it," she said, but I saw the doubt flickering in her eyes. The figure was closer now, a pulse of darkness that seemed to envelop everything in its path. Before I could respond, a loud crash erupted from just behind us. The crates shuddered as the figure was now in the same space we occupied. I could feel its presence, cold and suffocating. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. "Go!" she cried, shoving me toward the other side of the warehouse. I stumbled but regained my balance. I could feel the heat of fear on my skin as I sprinted away, the pounding of my heart matching the countdown. 1. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind me. I glanced back just in time to see the figure moving with unnatural speed, its form shifting as it lunged toward us. I couldn't stop to think. I just ran. We reached a pair of double doors at the far end, but they were locked tight. I rattled the handles desperately. "It won't open!" I shouted, fumbling around for a way out. The woman grabbed my shoulders and pulled me close. "We have to find another way." There was a fear in her voice I hadn't noticed before. "Look for a window or anything." I scanned the room, heart racing. To my left, I saw a series of old panes, grimy with dust, but still intact. "Over there," I yelled, pointing. "We can break it." The footsteps grew louder, and I could almost feel the heat of its presence creeping toward us. "Help me!" I screamed as I ran toward the window. We both hurtled ourselves against the glass, but it held strong. I felt my chest constrict as I slammed my fists against it. "It's not breaking! Stand back!" she shouted. She kicked at the window with all her strength. The glass cracked under her assault, a web of fractures spreading across its surface. "Faster!" I urged, feeling the air shift behind us. The figure was almost there, its edge of darkness clawing at the edges of my sanity. Then, with one final kick, she broke through. Shards of glass fell to the ground, and I flung myself through the opening, cutting my palms on the sharp edges. I landed on the other side, pain shooting through my hands, but I didn't stop. I looked back to see the woman hesitating, her eyes wide with fear. "Come on!" I shouted, urging her forward. Just then, the figure reached the window, its shadowy form spilling through the broken glass like smoke. I could almost feel its icy breath, and in that instant, I knew we had to act fast. Before she could jump, I realized something chilling. "We need to hurry. The countdown." But the words died on my lips as I felt my hands begin to warm. I glanced down, horrified to see numbers flickering across my palms, rising quickly to 0. No, 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 I whimpered. I could barely think. What does 0 mean? That's when I saw it. The figure had paused, peering past the glass, and its gaze locked onto me. A new dread gripped my chest. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness enveloped me, a heavy curtain that muted the world. I struggled to comprehend where I was, but the grip of fear tightened around me. My palms throbbed with residual pain, and I pressed them against my face, trying to anchor myself to reality. A moment later, the shadows receded. I opened my eyes to find myself in a dimly lit room. Flickering lights cast eerie shapes on the walls. I was still in the warehouse, but it felt different, smaller, more confining. "Where are we?" I whispered, my voice sounding hollow in the silence. "It's a storage room." The woman stood beside me, her eyes darting around. "They hide things here. We need to find a way out." The countdown on my palms was gone, replaced by an unsettling emptiness. I felt a chilling sensation crawl up my spine. What did it all mean? I looked at her, feeling lost. "What happened back there?" "I don't know, but that thing, it can find us." Her voice trembled slightly. "We have to move before it does." I nodded, though panic gnawed at my insides. Moving through the cramped space was disorienting. Every creak of the floor made my heart race. I strained my ears for any sign of the figure, expecting it to materialize from the shadows. "We need to search for another exit," she said. "There must be something." I scanned the room, my eyes settling on a heavy metal door in the far corner. It appeared rusted, almost abandoned, but it was the only alternative we had. "Over there," I pointed, the hope in my voice contrasting with the weight in my chest. "Let's check it out." We approached cautiously, trying to make as little noise as possible. Each step felt like a betrayal of our fear, echoing in the stillness around us. When we reached the door, I grabbed the handle, pulling it down with all my strength. It didn't budge. "It's locked," I said, frustration churning within me. "Find something to break it down," she urged, scanning the room again. I caught sight of a heavy metal pipe lying among scattered debris. "This!" I lifted it off the ground, feeling its weight in my hands. "Careful. We don't want to attract attention," she warned. With a deep breath, I swung the pipe against the door, and it clanged loudly. I flinched, but didn't stop. I struck again, and again. With each impact, I could almost feel the darkness outside swirling, moving closer. "Faster!" she urged again. I gave it one final desperate swing, and the lock shattered. I could hear something shift outside. My heart stammered at the sound. "Go! Open it!" She pressed against my shoulder, urgency in her eyes. I kicked the door open, spilling into what looked like a narrow alley behind the warehouse. The dim light of the street flickered in front of me, promising safety. But reality kicked in. My hands felt hot again. I glanced down, and numbers were appearing like fire against my skin, counting down ominously. "What's happening?" I stammered, but before she could answer, the air shifted again. "Go! Now!" she yelled, shoving me forward. I hesitated, caught between fear and the need to escape. The countdown quickened, and then silence. A shadow loomed above us, cold and writhing, swallowing the alley as it moved in our direction. "Run!" I screamed, propelled forward by sheer instinct. I sprinted into the night, not daring to look back, the darkness swallowing my chances of survival with every step. Chapter 2. I raced through the alley, my heart pounding like a war drum. The flickering streetlight barely illuminated the path ahead. The air felt thick, as if something was trying to clamp down on me. I focused on the sound of my footsteps and the rapid breaths escaping my lips. "Where do we go?" I shouted, my voice barely breaking through my panic. "Right!" she yelled back. "There's an old bar down there. We can hide inside." I veered right, the brick walls closing in around us. The shadow behind us was gaining. My palms were tingling, the numbers swirling ominously. I glanced down. They were back. This time, they blinked faster, like a broken countdown timer. I wanted to scream. We reached the bar's entrance, a battered wooden door. I shoved it open and stumbled inside, the scent of stale beer and dust hitting me hard. She followed, slamming the door shut behind us, and I leaned against it, panting. "Did we lose it?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. I don't know," she replied, her voice shaky. "We need to find somewhere to hide." I looked around the dim bar. Shadowed booths lined the walls, and a long countertop stretched along the back. "Over there," I pointed to an empty booth wedged in a corner. Before we could move, I heard a noise outside, the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet. My stomach dropped. "It's out there," I said, darting my eyes to the door. "Get down!" she hissed, and we slid into the booth. The shadows stretched menacingly along the floor, inching closer. "Why is this happening?" I whispered, fighting the urge to tremble. "What do those numbers mean?" "They must be connected to whatever that thing is," she said, her breath coming in quick bursts. Maybe they're counting down to something." "What does that even mean? What happens when they reach 0? She couldn't answer. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and we pressed ourselves deep into the booth, hoping for the best. My mind spun with questions I couldn't chase down. Was it a trap? An escape time? The darkness felt tangible now, like a predator waiting just outside the door. I peered through the crack of the booth. There was a window far to my left. Maybe we could use it to escape again. But then I saw it, a grotesque silhouette drifting past, shifting outside like smoke. It was searching. My blood ran cold. Whatever it was, it seemed sentient and aware. "Look!" I pointed to the window, the small lifeline glinting with a sliver of hope. "We can use that to get out." "Wait, it might see us," she hissed, her eyes wide. I wanted to protest but held back. The shadow stopped, lingering just outside the door. My pulse raced, anticipation clawing at my throat. I felt the numbers on my palms flicker again, their urgency mounting. Then the door creaked open. In that moment, I froze. The silhouette loomed in the doorway, head tilted, as if scenting the air for us. I barely dared to breathe, but my racing heart seemed to echo in the silence. "Now!" she whispered fiercely, and we bolted for the window without a second thought. But just as I reached for the edge, a hand shot out from the dark, gripping my wrist with bone-crushing force. "Help!" I screamed, struggling to pull free as the shadow drew closer, darkness swirling around us like a tornado. And that's when I realized we were trapped. I thrashed against the grip, panic surging through me as the shadow loomed closer, its form blurring with darkness. The hand holding my wrist was cold and unyielding, and I desperately tried to kick free. But the figure was stronger, dragging me back into the gloom. I could feel my heart racing, the countdown on my hand vibrating with an urgent pulse. 1, 0. In that moment, fear transformed into a primal instinct for survival. I twisted my wrist with all my might, breaking free, and surged forward towards the window. "Go!" I screamed to her, but my voice barely broke through the chaos. I launched myself through the opening just as I heard a terrible roar outside. I landed hard on the pavement below, rolling to absorb the shock. Pain shot through my body, but I forced myself to stand. I had to keep moving. I glanced back to see the woman still struggling within the bar, the silhouette moving swiftly, closing in on her. "No!" I shouted, reaching out for her, but the street was dark and empty, as if swallowing her whole. It was only then that I realized this was never about escape. I was now part of a nightmare whose rules shifted with every heartbeat. Time seemed to stretch around me as I darted away from the bar, the night air thick with the scent of impending danger. I could feel the numbers on my palm fading, but fear clawed at my mind. What had it meant? And what would happen next? But I didn't stop. I sprinted down the street, searching for a hiding place or anyone who could help. Lights flickered as if intentionally playing tricks on me, shadows lurking just beyond the reach of illumination. I could still feel its presence, a weight in the air, like a predator circling its prey. I turned the corner and stumbled across a small alleyway, pressing myself against the cool brick wall. I could hear whispers in the distance, eerie and beckoning, echoing the voices of those who had gone before me, the others marked with numbers. I couldn't escape that sensation. I was still being hunted. What if I wasn't the only one? What if they were coming for me now? My hand throbbed again. The numbers flickered back into existence, each thrum resonating against my skin. One last heartbeat, counting down to the inevitable. As I leaned against the wall, I caught a glimpse of a figure approaching at the end of the alley. It was another person, but my heart sank as I noticed the same deep flush of crimson glowing across their palm. I backed away instinctively, but this stranger looked frantic, searching like I was. "Help us!" they shouted, voice layered with urgency. I hesitated, recognizing the desperation, but wondering if I could trust them. "Do you see it too?" I asked, breathless. They nodded, a flash of panic in their eyes. "We need to find a way out together. It's coming." I glanced back toward the entrance of the alley. The shadow moved closer, tendrils of darkness reaching toward me. It felt alive and insatiable. With no time left to lose, I stepped towards the stranger. "Then let's go." We dashed down another alley, two unknowns bound together by fear and instinct. The numbers clicked ominously on my palm as adrenaline surged through me. Something big was about to happen, but I had no choice but to keep moving forward, deeper into the night. But questions lingered in my mind. Who was that shadowy figure really? What did the countdown mean? And what had happened to the woman? I could only hope she had found a way out. I felt a tightness in my chest, the echoes of those unanswered questions clinging to me. As we reached a busy street, the dim lights from nearby houses flickered ominously. I glanced over at the stranger, catching a glimmer of hope mixed with fear in their eyes. Whatever was happening, it remained unresolved, an echo of uncertainty rattling with every beat of my heart. I turned my palm up, watchful of the numbers as they glowed like an ominous reminder of the unseen danger that could still be lurking around every corner. The night stretched before us, dark and full of unknowns. "We need to keep moving," they urged, and I nodded, feeling the weight of an unfinished story hanging above us. I still think about that night sometimes, wondering if everything I saw was real, or if I was losing my mind. Did we manage to escape, or were we still part of that strange game? I guess I'll never know.